now provide a platform for live coverage of political rallies and electioneering campaign from anywhere in Nigeria. Political news stories, political editorial reviews, political discussions, personality profile, People's Parliament from the National, State and Local Government Assembly. Contact us now on 0803 471 8550 or 0803 724 9733 01453 3407.
Our 24-hour news station.
Thanks for staying with us on Cool Digest, the Thursday edition. I got the flu earlier, but trust me, it's nothing compared to what APC governors are catching now. It's called the impeachment fever. It kick-started in Adamawa, and of course, the All Progressives Congress is saying that about 5 of their governors are on the sack list. The big question is, how true is that, and which state is next? Will Nasarawa be the next stop? As we speak now, the House of Assembly there is serving the governor an impeachment notice via the media. Now, many are also questioning the legality of that and how right, how true that can be. But it happened already in Adamawa. Stakeholders are saying we were not served impeachment notice. But then you heard about the 7-man panel, and as we speak now, there's a new acting governor in Adamawa State. I still have Chijioke Eze with me. Thank you very much for staying the course of the show. And then we're talking about the relationship that should exist between the executive and the legislature in Nigeria. But unfortunately, what we've seen thus far is the lawmakers that should provide check and balance for the executive. The only time they go against the executive governors is when there's a political tension in that state. It's happening already in Edo State. Prior to this time, before certain people decamped from APC to PDP, there was a relative peace that exists between the executive and the legislature. Why should this happen only when there is a political interest involved?
Well, it's a very unhealthy, how do I say it? When they are both at peace, you know, over a long period, it's quite unhealthy. But why these things happen so is, you must understand that outside the federal government, the federal house is where you have members of all the parties sitting together. In most states, you just have one party in that state, where if the governor is APC, you know, most of the members of the house will be APC. If it's PDP, most of them will be PDP. And because of party interest and then individual stakes in the matter, you'd realize that, you know, what ordinarily would make me cry foul, but because we're all together eating from the same purse, I would rather call you to the side and say, hey, you need to calm down on this matter or that matter. It's only when it's like the case of Edo State, when it is outright, where people are already measuring their options to say, what are my chances? The election year is coming. What are the opportunities I have here? You know, and they realize that, okay, we might need to change camps, and then people move to PDP, and then they suddenly remember. And it's funny, but it's akin to exactly what's going on in Adamawa State, where somebody moves from PDP to APC, and is being, in quotes, witch hunted, and somebody moves from APC in the house to PDP, and then he or she, or they rather in this case, are being witch hunted because these ones were members of the house who were suspended, and they've gone, they are trying their hands in courts, trying public opinions, you know, just to generate interest and then try and build emotions, you know, to support their case. But as it stands, they're still suspended in Edo State, and the governor is still impeached in Adamawa State.
Let's look at the use of this impeachment clause by the House. Many have called it the misuse or the abuse of the clause. The moment there is an imbalance, a change in numbers at the floor of the House of Assembly, then the next thing that comes to mind is we have the party impeached. Some are saying probably the reason why the president is safe now is because his party has the floor of the National Assembly. Would you say that there is need to review this impeachment clause and how it's being used at the level of the House of Assembly?
Well, there is a need to impeach its to review its use. However, there is nothing we can do about the impeachment clause. It should stay. It must stay. Because if it doesn't stay, already the Constitution provides immunity to 7 governors and the president. So, senators, I guess. So, if you take out impeachment, you essentially just leave power for the duration of that office in the hands of whoever is there. So, impeachment clause must remain. However, I would advise that we revisit situations that would bring about impeachment. Impeachment is supposed to be the last resort, not the first option. In fact, it's almost a greeting now. I will impeach you. It's very funny, but that's what it is. And maybe because it worked in the past, not just because of the governors at the Central House, where in one dispensation we had 4 Senate presidents. It was beyond ridiculous. It was almost on an annual basis. Oh, this guy is there for 1 year. Oh, it's as if people are even looking at their wristwatches.
It's time to go.
It's time to get a new Senate president. What did he do last week? Okay, we're impeaching him. To the point where the late Chuba Okadigbo had to take the mace. And he infamously called it my mace, because now that kind of impunity, you would need a higher power to curtail, where a public office holder thinks it's his right, it's his birthright, So the impeachment clause is good. I think it's the height of the check, for public office holders. However, those who apply impeachment need to also understand that there are other ways, Before your case goes before a judge in court, you're expected to try and dialogue with whoever you're coming to court with. You're expected to exhaust other opportunities of a peaceful resolution. It is in the collapse of all of those options that, the judge supposedly hears your case. So that's how it's supposed to be with impeachment. You're not supposed to just dish out impeachment at the first opportunity. You're expected to at least warn the supposed person who's to be impeached, warn them, let them know that these actions are impeachable of offenses and you need to retrace your steps. But I've never seen such here.
But then there have been lots of alleged illegality shrouding the process of impeachment in our political history as a nation. Some have asked the question if lawmakers watching impunity and corruption happen over a period of time are not also culpable. For instance, if there were reasons to impeach a governor in 2008 and then you didn't do anything until 2014, don't you think that that impeachment should be a shared responsibility and punishment, both for the executive and the legislatures?
Yes, but who's going to met it? Because the legislature supposedly is the strong arm that holds the throat of the executive. So I can't hold your throat and hold my throat at the same time. You can't punish me because I am supposed to, you're one person or a few people. We're a much larger group of people. And you may not have the disposition to hold us accountable now. By sheer population and position of the Constitution, the legislature usually has the power to effect such punishment against the governor or the executive arm, as it were. But the biggest challenge in this is it's easy for the Constitution does not create room to have the legislature punish themselves, so to speak. If you were to be impeached and you wriggled your way through it, it shouldn't in the future now count against you, because if you didn't do it back then, why didn't you do it? In the case of Inyako, why didn't you do it in 2008? Why are you doing it now? I'll give you one small example. Bill Clinton was going to be impeached over the Monica Lewinsky scandal on the grounds of perjury because he had come out and denied any knowledge. And then he realized that my political career is going. If I don't ride on the emotion of the American people, since they love me now, I will be in trouble. So he goes and makes a public confession and an apology. And he's not exactly exonerated, but he's salvaged emotionally by that apology. Kenneth Starr was the Well, it sat on him, so to speak. He had the strongest say as to which way the hammer would, or the sword would cut, but he chose to save Clinton. Now, because he was supposedly salvaged, exonerated by that apology and by the emotion of the American people, it can no longer hold against him. But Nyako committed offenses many years ago. The House held on to it and kept it. It couldn't be, it's impossible that the House would say, oh, we were watching him for all these years. It's impossible. So if you didn't impeach him then, why are you doing it now? So if it was an offense this many years ago, why, and you didn't act, why is it now that you're acting? Unfortunately, maybe it would come up at some point that the Constitution needs to be reviewed. But these are lapses, you know, that require proper deep thinking and, you know, different case scenarios to address it the way it should be, because who punishes the legislature for their own misconduct? If you were not a speaker and your conduct wasn't so outrageous, you wouldn't get suspended, you wouldn't get removed. But in an event where it's almost a consensus offense, where the people fail to act, and there are reasons to act, there are allegations, there are facts to show that these guys have stepped out of line, and you're not acting, who then punishes you?
You know, the anathema of it is that the lawmakers, as it is in Adamawa, are also the beneficiaries of the impeachment. The speaker who sat over the impeachment proceedings is now the acting governor. Well, let's take this feedback from our Facebook page, and shortly we'll be looking at how all of this impact on the quality of governance that is obtainable in this state. This is from Abubakar Ishak from Yola. Is it possible to impeach someone who hasn't broken the law? That anyone, including the PDP, can successfully use impeachment against an elected official is a derivative of the fact that none of the victims are clean. Thank you so very much for your contribution all the way from Yola. How do you think this impeachment saga now would impact on quality of governance? This is from a state that has suffered from, you know, poor infrastructural development. As we speak now, it's still fighting insurgency, and most people, they are living, you know, a very poor quality of life. I mean, we have an active governor for the next 3 months. Do you see that impacting on the people's lives?
No, honestly, even if his intentions were the very best, 3 months will be too short for him to make any meaningful impact.
Bearing in mind that there's a dissolution of all political appointments.
That's exactly my point. You know, I think even if his intentions were the best, 3 months will be too short for this to cascade to the people who truly need the help from the government. And well, we are yet to see why he's dissolved all appointments. All the commissioners are gone. Now it's permanent secretaries. We're yet to understand why he's doing so. Maybe he will wake up next week and appoint a new set of people. We're yet to see. However, this reeks of the quest for power. He's been speaker. He has 3 months to be acting governor. Is this how he wants to chase his opportunity to remain governor? We're yet to see.
And this is the second time he will be acting as governor in Adamawa State. Let's quickly look at the allegations coming from the opposition party.
Correct.
This is an excerpt from The Nation. We know it has been the dream of the ruling PDP to rule for 60 unbroken years, not minding if Nigeria becomes a desert. The evil machination has manifested in Ekiti. It manifested yesterday in Adamawa. They have carried it to Nasarawa, and they have Edo, Osun, and Rivers in their sight. End of quote. And of course, in addition to that, they're saying Sanusi wrote a letter, he was removed. Nyako wrote one, he was removed. And then that PDP has about 5 more governors of the opposition in mind. Do you see any iota of truth in all of this?
Well, the part of PDP wanting to rule for 60 unbroken years is, for me, it's unfounded. First, let's not forget in a hurry that most of the APC members were once PDP members. And, okay, let's say half of them were PDP, the other half were ANPP. At which point did the PDP make this declaration? It's popular that the Labour Party in the UK ruled for almost 70 years or more. But did PDP make that declaration? When was it made? To whom was it made? And why is it coming up now? And how did this person, gain access to this supposed claim? If you were there when it was made, were you in tandem with the declaration at the time? Or is it because it's turning against you, and then you're coming out to leak secrets that you held dear at some point? That's left for time to judge, because this is the 16th year, I suppose. Or by the next one, it will be their 16th to 20th year. So we would have a minimum of, say, 40 to 44 years for that to come true. But let's look at the allegations, the ones we can tie. It's not just the, PDP wanting to rule for 60 years. Sanusi wrote a letter. He supposedly lost his job. Nyako wrote a letter. But the letters were two different kinds of letters. Sanusi's letter were eliciting the ills of the system, trying to expose a system he couldn't penetrate, more like reporting them to the president and to the nation to say, hey, this is what's going on in this country. I don't think it's something I should keep to myself or keep to a select few. Let everybody know it so that we all can hold ourselves accountable to these offices. But Nyako's letter was completely different. Nyako's letter was inciting, it was disturbing, it was unsettling. It's the kind of letter that, fortunately, the people were wise enough to see through and to see that if we went by the way of this letter, it would affect us. We would still be the ones to lose. Because it could jolly well have started a terrible unrest up north, and it would degenerate into the south. So these two letters were very different.
Just a minute, Eze. This is Bala Aminu from Yola. The impeachment of state governors and the recall of elected assembly members should be more rampant in Nigeria than we are seeing. What should matter is whether the elected public officer committed the alleged offense, period. That's Bala Aminu. Thank you very much for your contribution. But let us also consider the timing of all of this.
Sure.
And this is happening about just 6 months to a general election.
Yeah.
One would want to wonder, is it that the lawmakers just woke up from a long slumber to find out that the executive has been doing wrong all this while? Or it was when the guy decamped from the ruling party that the skill on their face dropped and they saw the impunity in leadership?
No. They had always been aware of the impunity, but it was in their favor. We're talking about affiliations. This man and I used to eat from the same pot. He's supposedly seen the light in another direction. If he goes down that route, what are my options? What are my chances? Can I go down that route with him? If I do, what will I get out of it? This is politics. As they say, permanent interests, no permanent friends or enemies. It will shock you. Tomorrow, if Nyako comes back, he could be the fire shake of Adamawa, because it's all about relationships. I remember he was asked to apologize. He refused vehemently. So who's to say what will happen if he actually does apologize? We had something similar when Bamanga Tuko was dissecting PDP. It was essentially because of Bamanga that the defections, took place. Now, Bamanga is out of the picture. Somebody else is there, and you find people returning. Who's to say what will happen in a few months, in 2 weeks, in 1 month, if he comes back and says, okay, guys, I'm pretty sorry for all I have done and all of this embarrassment and all that I have caused. How do we make amends? At that point, then the story might also change. But for me, I would like to see that I would like to say, rather, that the lawmakers knew from time. They probably held that, held the allegations as a leash just held on to it to say anytime the governor steps out of hand,
We will
we
use
will
this against
use
him.
this against him. And I suppose the governor also got tired of being in the stranglehold of these guys. Like, if I want to do this, hey, okay, impeachment. I want to go right, impeachment. I want to go left, impeachment. I want to go forward. And you know what? Do your worst. Let's see how you go. Because truth is, he's also managed. He's held on for how many years? 7 years now? Close to 7 years or more. He's held on. And it's a few months to his, what do you call it?
Determination of his tenure.
Termination of his tenure. And he's looked at it, what do I have to lose? And any governor who has either continuity in himself or in a stooge, a protege who would, come in for his sake, this is the time to work. This is the time to tie up affiliations. This is the time to, do the groundwork. Now, if you didn't, how do I say it, take the step to say, I either decide to go and work for who I want to become governor after me, or stay in this stranglehold till the end. He chose, he made his choices. We don't know his choices. We don't know why he did what he did. However, he's done what he's done. It's the aftermath that we know. It is the reaction of the House that we know. What led to it? There was a time they were hobnobbing. We didn't know all these details. We didn't know all the crimes he committed. But they're no longer hobnobbing, and then that's out. So until we are able to know what led to this degeneration of relationships, then we can't truly discuss, where the lapses were. However, I repeat for clarity's sake, the House members in Adamawa cannot say that they were not aware or that they didn't have adequate reason to effect this impeachment long before now. And if it were possible, if it was something that the courts could do or the Constitution provided for, somehow, some punishment should be meted out on these guys. If it is the very same allegations of how many years ago that you're bringing back now and you're using them practically hook, line, and sinker, then you should be held. It's akin to a policeman who fails to arrest a criminal. You know this guy's an armed robber. There is evidence against you. You know his house. All these years you didn't do anything, and all of a sudden you wake up and you go and arrest him. So what were you doing all the while when you knew you could arrest him? You let him continue to perpetrate his acts. So you should be held.
It's all right. Let's just take some time out to read our Facebook comments. It's www.facebook.com/CoreTV News. This is Banker Koyeja from Maryland. Praise be to Allah. We accept what has happened. This is the judgment of man. We should all remember that there's God's judgment in the hereafter. And I believe you're quoting Iyanko himself. Iyanko takes his case to God. The masses also have no one but God. Thank you for your contribution. Let's just have more. If we have more comments coming from our Facebook, this is Chinyere Olaolu from K2. Please tell Jonathan that we know that the federal task force that he put in Lagos alone are PDP's military wing to cause trouble in 2015. Lagos is neither Ekiti, nor Adamawa or Nasarawa. We are the nation's elite, and we will not be hoodwinked. Now, talking about the 2015 AZ, some were hopeful that the APC is that hope that will transform Nigeria to a two-party system. At least for once, many said we will have alternatives if there is, because some have also argued that if you look at the affiliation between ACN, CPC, and some parts of PDP, it looks like it's the same people that are just, recycling themselves. But if this allegation is true that 5 more governors are to be sacked from the APC, what do you think this portends for the 2015 general elections?
Well, I would first like to think that it will be very difficult for the PDP to effect impeachments of these 5 guys. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago? I think it was yesterday. Some members of the House in River State, publicly, led by Chidi Lloyd, decamped to APC. I think they were 19 in number, between 18 and 19, I guess. And now, I don't know how many there are in that House, but when you have 19 people on one man's side, impeaching him won't be an easy task. You know, that's on one end. I still want to see what would happen there. In Edo State, the people there have, you know, not just the people in the House, but the people of the state have also passed a vote of confidence on the governor. So we're waiting to see how that can happen. But in, say, Nasarawa State, where there was a decamping, let's not forget first, or also that Oshomole ran under ACN and won. And when ACN metamorphosed into APC, so he didn't decamp. He had always been there. It's not the same with Rotimi Amici or Makura, who had to decamp, or Kwankwaso, who decamped. Now, funny, why isn't anybody talking about impeaching Rabiu Kwankwaso? So, if you say it's a PDP plot, there has to be the grounds for the plot. But why is Rabiu Kwankwaso the least talked about person in terms of impeachment? So, there has to be the ground for it. If there is a ground for impeachment and the House members are considering and acting in line with that consideration, the question shouldn't always, or shouldn't exactly be, is it PDP who's doing it? It should be, is there the grounds for impeachment?
For that to happen. This
For
is
that to happen.
Fasasi Hamid from Jeba. If the governor is actually found guilty, then he should be prosecuted. This is why corruption will never end in this country. A man found wanting should be in prison. But in Nigeria, the guilty is given a get-out-of-jail-free ticket that encourages others to steal. Of course, we talked about earlier and asked the question why, you know, people who were impeached on the grounds of financial misappropriation are eventually not prosecuted. You know, on the contrary, they come back as godfathers and even in some cases win elections.
Now, this is part of the challenges that we have. A lot of activities or crimes are shrouded in grammar. What is financial misappropriation? Did I take money for tarring roads to build a hospital? It's misappropriation because you shouldn't rob Peter to pay Paul. But did I steal the money? It's also misappropriation. So what arm of misappropriation are we talking about? So when somebody comes and says there is gross misconduct, are you flouting the Constitution? If you flout the Constitution and it's not an infringement on any life or property, you can't go to jail for it. You flouted it. You got chopped out because you didn't follow due process. But if you stole, that's a crime. That's a punishable offense. You understand where I'm going to? So if in the case of Fayose, who was part of the reasons why he was removed was financial misappropriation, what is the definition of his misappropriation? How did he misappropriate the funds? Did he take what was to be used for A and used it for B? Did he overshoot his budget? What did he do when he overshot the budget? But when you say misappropriation and you do not itemize the misappropriation, then you leave a lot, you know, too many speculations, and especially when there is no evidence. There are cases of governors who, upon impeachment, were taken by EFCC. Ladoja battled through EFCC and then the courts and then got reinstated. There are cases where somebody is, how do I say, fired off a job and EFCC is right at your door waiting to pick you up.
Just a minute, Eze. Gaskia Ado from Yola. All the 4 APC governed states take note. You've been warned. But this is rather unfortunate that at the moment where Nigeria's democracy needs to be advancing, it's rather drifting backwards. Opposition is good for the people. PDP obviously doesn't know this. You know, you made mention of EFCC, and it's not the first time we've had, you know, agencies like that call executives to question. But it seems that seems to be all there is to it. We heard that is answering. I mean, you can recall Fayose has had a case with the EFCC for since he was governor, since he was impeached in 2003 thereabout. You know, you made mention of Oyo State governor. None of them. Don't you think there's something wrong with these so-called, you know, agencies like EFCC and ICPC?
Part of the challenges I think there are is transparency. A lot of government activities are shrouded in so much layers of secrecy and distortions that even if you dug, you would be beyond brilliant to be able to really tie some of these allegations to these governors. You know, at the end of the day, all we have are speculations and rumors. Oh, Tinubu stole money from Lagos State and he owns half of Lagos. He did this, he did that. But if these evidences were available, somebody would have gone there and tied him to it.
I think oftentimes those people that are tagged as thieves, as political thieves, actually didn't do anything wrong.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is those who are accusing them are not backing up the accusations with evidence. It's easy for me to say, hey, you stole. You must have stolen for you to be able to own this car. But then, when they say, where did he steal from? How did he steal? Do you have evidence? You say, well, he's a public servant, this is his salary, and he drives a car of this value. How do you marry that? If there is no evidence, there has to be evidence. I can be unemployed, I can be very poor, and live at the penthouse in Asokoro. If you cannot establish that I am a thief, then there's no way I can go to jail. Do you understand the point? That's it. So there are countless accusations, but very little evidence to back this up.
We're rounding up now. APC is heading to court. So we saw the Supreme Court overrule the lawmakers. It happened in Oyo, in Plateau, and Anambra. The question is it going to happen in Adamawa? Just before you answer that, Hilary Agbakoba from Inewi, isn't it curious that the speaker, who is desirous of being a direct beneficiary of the whole thing, was the one who personally presided over the impeachment? Only Nigeria can such a lack of shared decency be celebrated.
I would like to quickly address this comment.
Okay.
It's constitutional that the speaker will take the position in the absence of the governor and the deputy. In America, if anything happens to the president, the vice president takes charge. In the absence of the vice president, it goes down through their ranking system. So that the speaker who presided over the impeachment is the acting governor, is only constitutional.
Now, you don't see anything wrong with that.
It's not about whether there is anything wrong with the happening. If the Constitution has deemed it fit to be so, then the issue is with the Constitution and not with the instance. Because that's what the Constitution has provided. In the case of Yaradua and Jonathan, if Jonathan hadn't been made president by virtue of the Constitution, it would have been a crime by every means, because you would have flouted the Constitution. So if it worked in the case of Yaradua and Jonathan, if it worked in the case of Alamisiya and Jonathan, what is wrong with it working in the case of Nyako and Fintiri?
Because there was actually an arithmetic to that. The deputy governor, the former deputy governor now in Adamawa State, Balangilare, happens to come from the same local government with Amadou Umaru Fintiri. Now, what it meant is that if the what's it called now? If the deputy governor becomes the governor, you know, as the case may be, the speaker would have to step down and become a normal member of the House of Assembly. And some have said that also has impacted on the quality of decision that we have now from the 7-man committee.
It's left for argument, actually. That it's open to arguments that, oh yes, it's possible, because he would have weighed the options to say, hey, if we pardon the deputy governor, I would lose my position because of that pardon. And I read yesterday that the report of the panel did not indict the deputy governor. However, a letter of resignation was received from his office, was read, approved, and adopted.
You know, Iyako also said that the only person that the deputy could write a resignation to was him and not the House of Assembly. That as far as he is concerned that the deputy governor still remains in office. This comes from Kayode Agiri in Ekpe. The House of Assembly in Adamawa should be disbanded because they failed to impeach the said Nyako West and PDP. It's unequivocal that their decision to impeach the governor was to pave way for the 2015 presidential election.
Well,
let us move ahead now. Do you see the Supreme Court or whatever courts now, you know, overruling the lawmakers' decisions in Adamawa?
There may not be a strong case to overrule, in the sense that, as I said earlier, these offences have no validity period. They are offences, and they will remain offences. However, what is left for debate is the timing. If the timing now presents either legality or illegality, in the sense that if you didn't do it back then, if you thought it wasn't so harmful then, why are you doing it now? So because you're doing it now, and there are pointers that this is targeted at a system, you know, at a people, so to speak, that is where I believe the case is, where the argument really is, and it's up to whoever APC and Nyako would present, you know, to represent their, to the courts to represent their positions. But these people, or the office of the governor, committed these offences, got away with them.
Allegedly.
Allegedly got away with them. If these offences have been repeated over these years, now, they tried to impeach him some years ago. If he was pardoned, so to speak, and these acts have continued over the years, then that opens a fresh file. Because if you say, okay, he got away with it, and because he got away with it in 2008, therefore these things can't stand. Okay, they don't stand. Keep this file aside. Between 2008 and today, has he repeated these offences? If he has repeated these offences, then it's a new case file. So even if he escapes one, he may not escape the other. But we've seen cases like this get overturned, you know.
We're rounding up now. Kemi Pariola from Ondo. All the governors and president himself are guilty of what Nyako was accused of. He was only made a scapegoat. Take a look at the impeachment notice they served him: gross misconduct and mismanagement of public funds. And tell me which one of them is not guilty of it. Well, Chijioke Eze, thank you very much for joining us today on Cold Digest. We'll also love to hear from you, our Facebook and Twitter, and of course the YouTube handle right there showing on your screen for you to join us, and we'd love to hear from you. Nyako's removal makes it the 6th governor that has been impeached in Nigeria since 1999. Of course, it kick-started from Plateau with Joshua Dare. Of course, you heard about Rashidi Ladoja of Oyo State, as well as Mesiaga of Bayelsa, Fayose of Ekiti, and Peter Obi of Anambra State. However, 3 of those people were asked to go back by the Supreme Court that overruled the decision of the lawmakers. The big question is, APC is heading to court. Will Nyako be returned by the Supreme Court? Only time will tell. And will Nasarawa be the next stop for this impeachment fever? Only time will tell. Also, I am Nifemi Oguntoye. Thanks for joining us.
You can now watch Core TV News live from anywhere in the world on our website, www.coretvnews.com. Click on Live TV on our website and watch us live.
And welcome to Core TV Primetime Days.
To follow us on Twitter, click on Twitter icon on our website. On Facebook, click on the Facebook and YouTube to see all our previous news production. You can also watch us live on YouTube. Click Core TV, leave a space, then News. Core TV News, a 24-hour news station.